or in the Paarl area, if I remember correctly. And again, the ANC tried to turn it into a party political rally. And when I got up to welcome the president as the mayor, then I think, they started shouting and carrying on. And President Mbeki got up and he said, "This is wrong. Stop it. This is a state event, not a party event." And he took his political life in his hands to do that and to protect me, but President Zuma didn't.
But has that changed the way you look at him?
Well, President Zuma is a very nice person on a one-on-one basis, and we get on very well together individually. But you've got to give leadership, and you've got to understand the Constitution, and you've got to understand the separation of the party and the state. You can't use the state as a vehicle for party political activity. That is wrong. That is corruption in any democracy. And sometimes I worry that he doesn't get it.
Worse still, she says, it was a state function when none of what was seen here should have happened in the first place.
It was the culmination of a project of national, provincial and local government over 3 or more years of working very, very well together. It is completely wrong to turn that into a political function.
So, does that mean she will never again participate in similar events?
I will always go, not because I have to, but because I want to. I want to celebrate progress in South Africa.
And so she leaves to fight another day. Vuyo Mvoko, SABC News, Cape Town.
The presidency has hit back, saying Premier Zille has herself to blame. Presidential spokesperson Mac Maharaj spoke to Vuyo Mvoko.
Well, I expect the leader of any political party, big or small, to think that they will run things better than anybody else. I think this is a judgment call that the Premier is making, which is unrequired in this situation. The problem is that the MC was making interventions. Mrs. Zille chose to walk out. She decided the timing. She decided, I'm leaving. And she decides when she thinks the president must intervene and how. The fact of the matter is the following. The president was the keynote speaker. There was an official MC. And at any function, I have been brought up that you allow the person in charge of the function to take charge and run the function. And when the president's turn came to speak, he made a very powerful intervention. It is a pity that the Premier didn't stay behind. He first of all criticized the audience and said, "You are wrong to stop the Premier from speaking." He then went on to give them a talk on the importance of democracy, the importance of the right to everybody to be heard, the fact that by their preventing her from speaking, they were damaging their own cause for which we had gathered, namely economic development and job creation in the Saldanha Bay region. And he said that message, where all of us, all levels of government, business, labor, and you, the communities, are working together, got lost in this incident. And he says, and with that reasoning, Vuyo, he carried the audience with him to understand the importance of democracy.
She made during our interview is that there was apparent and very blatant use of state resources for party political gains. Would you like to comment on that one?
Well, I know the objection that the Premier has made. She's made two. One, that Marius Fransman should not have been the MC. I don't know where she gets that, what protocol she gets. He is a deputy minister in the national government, and there are functions taking place throughout the country where ministers and deputy ministers preside. That happens normally, and Marius Fransman is a deputy minister. The second one was about the T-shirts. Not everybody was wearing an ANC T-shirt. I am not aware of any rule of a public gathering which says how people should dress. This was not a black tie and tailcoat event where we expected the masses of the people to walk into an elite function.
Well, for the debate, we now go back to Cape Town, where Vuyo and his guests are standing by.
Give us a... Thanks very much to Mahendra. Well, those inserts do indeed set the tone. or at least give you, viewers at home, a sense of what we are going to be talking about here this evening, and of course more. And I am joined here in our studio here at Sea Point by Mr. Marius Fransman, who is the ANC's Western Cape chairperson. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, dear.
And right next to him is Mr. Robin Carlyle, who is one of the leaders of the Democratic Alliance here in the province, but also an MEC in the provincial government. Welcome to you too, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, also joining us is Mr. Ketna Sampson, who is the Western Cape's Chief Electoral Officer. Welcome to you too, sir.
Thank you for you.
Let me start with you gentlemen first, and I'm going to start with you, Mr. Carlyle. In your view, the events of the past couple of days and going back, of course, perhaps weeks and months, do they, in your view, constitute the kind of thing we should be having months before elections? I'm going to give you about a minute to just make those opening remarks.
They shouldn't be happening a month before elections. They shouldn't be happening during elections, and they shouldn't be happening ever. They are in conflict with the Constitution. The Constitution says no violence, no intimidation, no use of state resources by party, and no racism. And what we are seeing is all four of those, and very particularly the racism driven, I'm afraid, by my colleague, Mr. Fransman here.
And Mr. Fransman?
Look, I think, Rio, let me first of all say, elections or no elections, the Constitution speaks about transformation. That's the essence of it. One can't have elections in abstract. It's got to do with the issue of why people go towards elections. And it's got to do with transformation. It's got to do with non-racialism. It's got to do with the equitable resource allocations. The dilemma that we've got in the Western Cape is obviously that there's two provinces. One for the rich, like Mr. Carlyle and others, and one for the poor and the working families. That's the reality.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sampson, I'm going to come to you before I explore some of the for the horses. Before we get to some of the issues that the parties have raised, and we get also the responses or questions from members of the audience here, who, it must be said, are both drawn from the two political parties. I want you to just outline for us very briefly what for you constitutes an atmosphere that will at least guarantee us the greatest levels of a free and fair atmosphere that would lead to a free and fair poll come next year.
I think the most important thing for us is that there should be an environment of tolerance and people listening to one another, listening to debate. I think it's important for political parties also to focus on what they contribute to building this nation, because that's essentially what we're involved in. This election is about building the nation. And I heard the singing when we came in. The theme for this election is I Vote South Africa. And if we can sing in unison in order to build South Africa, I think that will be great. And that is the basis of which we go into this election. After the election, we'll still be South Africans. We'll be from different parties, but we'll still be people working hard to bridge the unbelievable gap between wealth and poverty, to create an environment where people are given an opportunity, and to accept the reality that we have this election in a country which is arguably the most unequal in the world. And I think for me, that's the critical factor. The important thing, therefore, for political parties is to have an understanding that we come into this thing together. The end and the net result of it all is how do we create a South Africa which gives us all space to grow and to develop in. The second point I wanted to make, and the final point in this regard, is simply, it's very useful, I think, for all of us to ponder on the distinction between determination to win an election and desperation. Because in desperation, there's no reason There's no argument, there's no debate. There's just, I want what I want. And we can't expect to win an election at all costs. That environment has to be created by all of us, in unison, working together, creating a better country for us and for our children.
Well, Mr. Fransman, I'm going to start then with you. From what the IEC has outlined here, do you foresee a problem for you as a party to, like, in other words, would you be able to actually adhere to all the things that he has outlined? Or do you foresee a challenge for your party? And if you do so, what kinds of challenges and where do they emanate from?
No, I think let's start with who wrote that constitution. Where does it come from? It came from essentially the leading forces of those that fought against apartheid. And that's the African National Congress and all other progressive parties, one. Secondly, who wrote the principal arguments in terms of the IEC legislation? It is the National Assembly that had to ultimately adopt it. So we own that as all political parties, but in particular the African National Congress. And therefore we will safeguard that. Now let's speak about what happened last week, because I think that triggered this. The reality is, let's take out the politics of deception, because what Helen Zille did, she actually instigated a group of people to boo her. Now let me tell you how that happened. One, the night before, she now said she called the president. Now why did she call the president? Because Marius Fransman is going to be on the program. Secondly, and I am the Deputy Minister of International Relations. Secondly, the municipality is a DA municipality, Saldanha. They deliberately refused to actually give the buses in Vredenburg, Saldanha, and other areas. So the people then came, obviously, with a anger. Thirdly, she went to that podium and I was there. She said publicly no one tried to protect her. I spoke. But more importantly, before she went to the podium, she shouted slogans. She insulted the people. She said, you are all corrupt. She said, where does this T-shirts come from? This is party T-shirts. The state is corrupt. Those were the words that she used. Now let me show you. It was not automatic. This is Helen Zille's speech. That before she went to the podium. So she talked about corruption. She talked about hijacked by political parties. So she went in there intentionally. It was not, her responses there publicly was not ad hoc. She prepared this before that meeting. And I think that's what's insulting. So she created what I call the politics of deception to create an impression that people, for example, wanted to bow down. And that's the unfortunate thing that happened there.
Okay, let me ask you to stop it right there. Very direct, Mr. Carlyle, allegations being made against your leader with regard to an event that has brought us, the latest, I shall say, of the events that have led us to where we are, raising fears among the people of the Western Cape and indeed the country that we may be heading for disaster in the Western Cape in the run-up to the election.
Fact is, as we all know, that Mr. Fransman packed the meeting, he bussed people in, and those people were there to shout the Premier down. Okay, let's not kid ourselves about it. He knows it and I know it. He says, we wrote the Constitution. Now, he wasn't even a member of the ANC when the Constitution was written. We wrote the ANC. We wrote Where was we South Africa, we wrote the Constitution. And when we talk like Mr. Fransman does, that you pick a sector of the population, you say this is good, the rest is bad. That's exactly what the people who wrote the Constitution didn't want to see happen. And if he reads this, he'll see it. And let me go.
We'll give you a chance, okay? You are going to pose questions. You are going to make comments. So if you could please allow the guests and the panelists to just speak.
So we have people who are shouted down. We have statements about transformation is going backwards. But when I produce the facts to show that 65% of the biggest leases that my province has written are for people who are black, coloured or Indian, Mr. Fransman refuses to answer. He doesn't say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. But the fact is, he knew he wasn't telling the truth because those leases were signed when he was the Minister of Transport and Public Works.
Okay, now, okay.
Can I respond?
Well, because... Okay. Because, Mr. Kala, you raised a fresh issue, I'm going to allow Mr. Fransman to respond directly to the list, if that's what you want, on the last point that he made. Because initially he responded to what you were saying earlier.
It's very important to listen to what Mr. Kala said. Another politics of deception. In 1990 already, I joined the African National Congress on unbanning. One. Secondly,
1990. Where were you before that?
Joining the ANC in the UDF. When the ANC was unbanned, we were there. Secondly, this is an important issue. Mr. Karnal say 65% of the properties that he identified. 65 of the properties that he identified as black. And then he said he didn't do it. It's in fact the ANC government that did it. Meaning he's right. He's reverse transformation in the Western Cape. 90% of all land. 90% of all land. 90% of all land, Buyo, in the Western Cape is in the hand of white commercial interests. That's what it is.
And Jews.
Okay, Mr. Kala, I'm gonna come back to you. Let me start with you this time around. I want to ask you about the incidents of the violent protests we saw on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Your opinion on that? What happened there, and who was responsible? And did your party have a role in what we saw?
Yeah, just let me respond to one thing that Mr. Fransman said.
Let's not go back. If you ask me, let's not go back. You got equal chances. He was responding to what you were saying.
I'll come back to it. I'll come back to it. What is my reaction to the violent protest? Well, my reaction is that the main thing that happened was poor people struggling to make a living on the streets were robbed and plundered and beaten and bashed. And where did those people come from who were in fact doing this? Were they from the ACDP? Were they from the DA? They were from the NA, sir. The ANC, sir. They were from the ANC. Councillor Nkotla, previous Councillor Lili, Mr. Nkombolo, they were all there. So it was the ANC who beat the small people of Cape Town and called it a protest.
Was it the ANC?
It's obvious it was not the ANC. Let's start there. But let's see what is the issue there. It is those thousands of people, innocent people, for 6 months, the DA government, both in the province and the city, refused to come and do refuse removal in the townships. Secondly, Mr. Carlisle, I'm actually disgusted by the fact that the DA mayor decided to go into the area with a mask on for 5 months. For 5 months, no toilets were, for example, coming to remove. Now, what happened there? The people came and raised serious issue. Again, provocation. Why didn't the Premier or a senior leader of the DA come and fetch that particular memorandum? Why? Was it deliberate? Now, whatever group that went into the area there and messed up, in fact, we've condemned that. Vendors, those are poor working families. Yes. We must protect them. So we cannot say that the majority of the people that were protesting were wrong there. It was a small group of individuals, and I suspect they were instigated, and that is the issue, to create an issue that the ANC was. The central question is, when is the DA, can the DA respond to say, when are they going to come, go clean the toilets of the people? Can they respond to say, when are they going to put up 2 billion rand taken away from Mitchells Plain, Khayelitsha, and Athlone? to put in between Cape Town and Milnerton under the DA, away from the poor working families. A bus rapid system for the rich, not for the poor. And I think that's the central question, Vuyo.
Okay, let me respond to that. Let me say, first of all, that he says somebody stirred it. Let me quote to him from Mr. Nkotla, proportional councillor for the ANC, who says, "You will not have to go hungry because there are so many places for you to loot in the CBD. The police cannot arrest us all. There will be too many." Let me say also to the honourable member, to the honourable deputy minister, you were the Minister of Transport when they started the BRT there. You were the Minister of Transport. You forgot? No. Let me finish. No, I've got one more point to make.
Okay, make the point.
And the second question, you ask about that. I ask about what happened to the 500 million that should have gone to these people and disappeared out of your department.
A third lie. A third lie.
Prove it.
Third
I've got
lie.
the facts here.
Let me respond. A third lie. A third lie that Mr. Kala said here. I was the MEC for Public Works and Transport when we decided and got the money for Klipfontein Road, a BRT. 25%. Ask him. 25% of the money that a poor family in Mitchells Plain, Athlone, Bonteheuwel and Khayelitsha will spend on transportation for a month would have gone in their pocket. You know what Mr. Karnal and the DA did? They took it when they took over. They took it away from that area and they took it to Milnerton. A third line. The essence here is, I think the debate is about political and real issues of transformation, and that's what I don't want to speak about a department.
Now, now, we've gone through 3 sets of issues, including a new one that you raised around transport and Mr. Fransman's role in it. But I want us now to go. No, I want us to.
Important issue.
I want us to now go to the bigger issues. The 3 or 4 issues we've discussed so far have a lot to do with the recent happenings. What happened on Thursday, what happened on Wednesday, and what has been happening in the weeks and months before the whole FISIS issue and all of that. But I want us to now go back. I want both of you to isolate 3 of the most important issues that have to do with equality, that have to do with democracy in this province. Do you want to start, Mr. Fransman?
Yes, no, indeed so. The reality is that service delivery is a big problem in the Western Cape.
Mr. Carlyle, can you sit back? Mr. Carlyle, excuse me, please, sir. If you could please sit back because you're disturbing the way we. Yes, sir. We're not going to be able to proceed if you keep on interrupting the way you do. Okay.
Second issue is race is a real issue because the way people in the provincial government and the city allocate resources is to reinforce apartheid, nothing else. If you look at the issue of race, the DA, there's 42 seats in the Western Cape Parliament. The total majority of their seats are white people. But they've brought today only people from the townships. That's a contradiction. The third issue, a real issue, is the attack on the poor. Farm workers, the minstrels. They actually are taking the minstrels on. They refuse to allow minstrels to walk in the CBD. A culture of our people. Helen Zille refused to allow the Khoisan recognition in the Western Cape. And lastly, the issue of crime. Townships, Khayelitsha, Mitchells Plain and others requires street lights. They require water. They require electricity. We don't require cuts for our people. So those are the real issues in our communities.
Mr. Karlan, there are 3 issues.
The first and most important issue is that we should all be equal and fair, free before the law. That's the most important issue. And when violence comes in, when intimidation comes in, then freedom and equality go out the window. That's number 1. Number 2, sir, is that we must serve the people. That's what we elected for. And that's what people pay their taxes for, so that those who are less fortunate. Let's just have a look from the stats 2011. They reveal that the Western Cape leads in the following areas. 99.1% of Western Cape residents have access to pipe water.
Can I interject you? Are you raising a third issue?
I'm going to bring a third issue.
Oh, okay.
91.1 have refuse removal, and I've seen refuse removal in the areas where he says there's none. 93.4 have electricity, and 96.9 have access to education, better than any other province. But let me say this. You cannot meet the needs of the people if the taxes get stolen. So the third most important area is, in democracy, you may not steal the people's money.
Okay. Now, here's what I want to say to all of you. Can you please order, please? Now, you've heard what the leaders who are here have to say about the situation we're finding ourselves in, 1, but 2, about what they think are the most fundamental issues affecting this province. Now, I want to find out from you if you agree with them. Now, okay, for the first round, we're going to take 2 questions from the ANC and 2 questions from the DA. I'm going to start with you, Sissy, and then you, sir, at the back. Yes. Okay. Are you from the ANC? Okay. And then are you from the DA, sir? No, we're asking the parties first. Yes. We'll come to you, Sissy, and to you, Buti, there. Okay? ANC start.
Enkosi, Mr. Mvoko. My name is Thandima Mbeshala, a member of the African National Congress in good standing. I live in Samora Machel, Ward 75 in Philippi. I want to start by saying, Mr. Mvoko, I want to agree with Mr. Marias, or Comrade Marias, when he says that it is our government that drafted the constitution. That O.R. Tambo's legal advisor, Mr. Albisalch, who is also a stalwart of the ANC and a former judge of the Constitutional Court, was amongst those people who drafted the constitution. And this constitution is ours.
Okay.
Now, I want to...
You have to be very quick, suppose, okay. Otherwise we need to give as many people as possible.
Comrade Marias, that if we speak about the constitution of the country, it refers to the respect of human dignity. What plans that the ANC has to save poor people and eradicating the pota, which the A is currently distributing like beaches in our locals?
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask, please, I'm going to ask everyone to be short and sweet. If it's a statement, it must be short and sweet and can't be followed by a question. If it's a question, please no long introductions, just so that we can effect easy participation. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Peggy Hadeb. I'm going to be very brief. I'm going to extract the facts from the truth. First and foremost, 5 sub-councils that are controlled by the ANC with 22 wards, and they are from Kailicha, Philip, Nyanga, Guguleto, and Mitchell's Plain. Their combined capital budget that was approved this year, it's 134 million. Far less than one sub-council that happens to be in Camps Bay, Sea Point, and the city center, with a total capital budget of 171 million. Now, that's only 3 wards. 3 wards have a budget of 171 million. 22 wards in the poor area have got a capital budget of 134 million. Secondly, the BRT, which is known as IRT, it's running at a deficit of 35 million per annum. Now, the current budget that was approved, it's 800 million. Out of that 800 million, the poor, they're only getting 18% of that budget. Secondly...
No, I've got to stop you right there. I've got to stop you. You're raising way too many issues. That's not fair. It is not fair. Let's go.
So what is the ANC going to do differently to reverse this appalling condition?
We're going to ask you to leave the room if that's how you're going to conduct yourself. Please. We're not going to tolerate this. If anyone chooses to, run with their own debate by themselves, we'll ask you to leave the room.
Okay, thank you very much. My question actually is for Mr. Fransman. I'm going to give him some clarity about municipality and the services that we are getting. In case he's living all the time in the office, he's not here outside. The Department of Health, Department Environmental Health, have organized themselves long time ago, from 2009, into serving the community in terms of service delivery, whereby there's a leakage. There's stuff you are needing from municipalities, health clubs in all over around Western Cape. Those people are elected from the community. They get to report the problems in the community. That is to come out with what the problem is. Instead of saying something you don't know, I will say, for instance, in wherever I'm staying, if there's a dump or there's a problem where municipality services, a group of that health club is the one that collects information, because councillors are not actually every day there, but city is assisting in terms of organizing the health clubs. Even Guguletu, Kayelicha, all around, go and look for the clubs and get a line.
Can you pass on the microphone? Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Philemon Jika. I'm staying there in Fuleni. I just want one question for Mr. Fransman. Yeah, I believe if you can take it the Western Cape from those years they were ruling the party here on Western Cape, was not better like that now. Because if you are looking now, it's very better, because that time I hear talking about was maybe something to take it over to these rural places, but he decided, he said DA come in, take it out that budget. But my question is the time they give those people to those places to make it right, why didn't do that? Because I take the money, sitting over the money, the time I was ruling the Western Cape. But now they coming to accuse another party. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You want to start?
I think first of all, the first question, respect for human dignity. The ANC's position is we can't speak about democracy without equality. We can't speak about democracy and freedom without equal allocations and better allocations to our people. Now, what has happened here? It is in fact a racist statement to say that the Western Cape is better than the Eastern Cape. Let me tell you why. Fourth issue that Mr. Carroll earlier also raised, and you raised it. The issue here is when the ANC was in government, we were either number 1 or number 2 in the country as well, right? But, now that's factual. Whatever I'll be saying is factual. Now the problem here, Buyo, is that we cannot, like a competition, say we are better than the Eastern Cape. The Eastern Cape, Western Cape didn't have Kala. It never had Bantustans. So if you want to say the Western Cape is better than the Eastern Cape, you're actually reinforcing a racist, historical apartheid history. That's what you're doing. Secondly, the Western Cape, colonialism started here. The apartheid apartheid biggest spend historically were here. And if you say you were against apartheid, and you then say, we are actually saying it's better than the Northern Cape, it's a reinforcement of a deep racist mentality. Now, what are we doing? We are doing, what the ANC will do is to judge ourselves, not against the Eastern Cape, to judge ourselves how we treat the poorest of the poor in the Western Cape. That's how we will judge ourselves. And our plans are clear. Our plans are clear. We will immediately make sure that this 48 areas, that's the last 5 years identified where there's fires and there's floods, we will immediately make sure that those people are taken out into areas which in the provincial government land is already in Constantia and in other areas in Parow and in Blaubert. But there's a syndrome of not in my backyard. They don't want to allow black people in our area. The second last point on this is around health. The Western Cape has the highest number of fetal alcohol syndrome in the world. The Western Cape has the highest number, if not the highest, the second highest of TB in the world. The Western Cape has the big diarrhea problem, and all of those three instances is to do with inequality, with the poverty, and with the way people are being treated in terms of health services on the Cape Flats. And I think those are the issues that we will correct. And then finally, the DA by own admission said in the annual report of 2012-2013, they've only built 11,000 houses with more than 2 billion rand. When the ANC was in government, we have built at least 20,000 houses a year. And that shows the problem.
Thank you. The DA is going to find it hard to take lessons in non-racism from somebody who speaks racism all the time. Honourable Fransman says when the ANC were in power, they were first or second in everything. In what? In making money disappear. Mr. Fransman doesn't deny the money disappeared. He just says he didn't know about it. He said it was his officials. And when he talks, and when he talks of the poorest of the poor, it was their money that disappeared. When he talks about fires and floods, we've done wonderful work. But where we haven't yet completed, why wasn't it done when his government was in power? Were there no fires or floods in those days? Of course there were. And let me just say that when that honourable friend up there, Becky, when he says 22 wards have 134 million, I don't know what the figure is, but that's 1/10 of the figure. It's completely wrong. Completely wrong.
Okay. We're going to come to you, sir, and you. You, sir, and you, sir. Okay.
Thanks, Vuyo. I thought that the DA does not respect the community because of, and I'll explain why. One, Khaled joined the DA in 2008. He doesn't know anything. That is why he's just making noise. Two, This is the constituency that the DA is more predominantly by white. They decided deliberately to rent a mob to make a noise here, because we can't even hear when colored speaks now. We can't hear that. But nevertheless, let me go to two fundamental questions that I want to ask.
Make it quick.
Very brief. The first issue that I wanted to ask, there were people who were involved in a bus accident. The provincial government of Western Cape took it upon that they are going to make an investigation and they are going to deal with those particular individuals. Actually, in contrary, the same company is got contract with the provincial government that has got buses that are not roadworthy. I just want to find out from Khaled what is happening about that particular case, because there were 22 people who passed away. The last question that I want to ask Maria.
No, can you keep it on?
Yes.
Please, please. Be fair, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Robert, for providing us with such a wonderful service. Thank you. Let me tell you, I am a DA ward councillor in Mitchell's Plain, and service delivery is happening in Mitchell's Plain. Service delivery is happening in the city. Service delivery is happening in the Western Cape. Now, I want to ask Mr. Marius Fransman.
Can we please
Mr.
have
Fransman,
order?
Mr. Fransman.
Can we please all
Thank you. I want to ask of you.
Can we please have order? Sir,
When the ANC introduced...
mister, do you mind sitting down? Can you hand over the microphone? Thank you very much. Can you speak, sir?
Enkosi Vuyo, igama lami ndingumzuzile Mbondwana, ndihlala kwa-Ward 35. Ndifuna nje ubuza i-questions ezimbalwa pha ku-Comrade Marius Fransman.
Ibenye bhuti.
Yes.
Ibenye bhuti.
Yes, Comrade Fransman, what plans do you have as the ANC to undo this racism, the reverse racism that is being done by the DA in the Western Cape? For instance, here we hear only the renaming of streets in Gugulet. We want service delivery, not the renaming of street. There is a closure of schools here. What plans do you have to undo that? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Where's the guy who was there? No, wait. Where's the guy who was there? It is up there.
Can I speak?
No, it was at the back.
I've got to speak.
Thank you very much. I do not represent a constituency, but I do represent my mother, who stays in Ward 9, of which the councillor here today is present. In 2007, the Premier came to Biable South. She promised Mr. Summers, you will get the title deed of your flat in Biable South. Today it is 7 years, close to 7 years later, and it's close to the election. She was then the mayor of Cape Town. She's now the Premier. How can the representative of the DA sit there and tell South Africa that they are a party to be trusted? That some of the people that are recipients of that false title deeds that they presented to the community, which is now clearly false. Can I be protected? Can I be protected from the speakers here?
Yeah, you need to finish though.
An investigation through the national government to investigate this matter. Why did the Premier, then Mayor, lied to the community? Okay. And why was that houses never handed over in 2007? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The first question and the third question was about the DA not being representative. Now, first of all, I look at the people there, they look representative of South Africa to me. But secondly, the one person said it's a rent-a mob. Well, you know, these are my people, I know them and they know me. That very noisy Kreiskop up there, that's Danny Christians. And he and I have done politics together in Mitchell's Plain for 14 years. Okay. With regard to the bus accident in Reenendal, I must tell you, there's two very disappointing things. One is the inquest, which should have been over long ago, is still going on. Secondly, 3 days after the accident, I closed the testing station, which fraudulently gave that bus a roadworthy. And the courts reversed it twice. And that guy is still fraudulently giving roadworthies. Okay? Okay. With regard to Mr. Simmers, I'm not sure. Yeah, there. I'm sorry to hear that. We are trying to transfer as fast as we can. If you give me the detail, I can go into it, okay? As far as service delivery is concerned, this city has never had the service delivery in 13 years of ANC rule that it's had in 7 years of DA.
I think we can see exactly when we say the DA has basket, the way Mr. Carlyle have just spoken and say, "Die Gryskop staan op daar." 1, 2. That's exactly how farm workers. That's exactly how farm workers are treated in the Western Cape. Secondly, it is wonderful to try and bring people from Khayelitsha only as the DA today here, but not to appoint them in senior positions in the party of the DA and in the government of the DA. It's an abuse of people's, it's an abuse of dignity, and it's abuse of rights of people. But that's what we accept. Thirdly, what we will do, on this issue of racism, we will immediately make sure there's a premier that doesn't say to people that they are refugees. Black people in the Western Cape are not refugees. We will immediately make sure if we are in government, that we will find, the ANC will put a premier that will make sure that the 27 schools on the Cape Flats, in Bishop Lavers, in Bonteheuwel, in those areas are being opened immediately. That's what we will make sure. When the ANC is in government, we will immediately ensure, because the issue is not now to grandstand again and say the person's title deed. You know, Mr. Carlyle, our people have suffered under apartheid. You know what you've done
Why
in the
didn't you do something about
You
it?
know what you've done in the Novo.
Where were you?
The ANC
Where were you?
The ANC government says the title deed of colored people in the Novo between Kraaifontein and Stellenbosch must be given to them so that they can have the title deed like the whites got it pre-94, free. What they've done, what Mr. Carnell did the other day, he pulled it back and he wants to evict those people. So, my dear brother, he personally is trying to evict people. So what we are saying, we've got a plan, we've got a strategy, we will go into this. We are actually asking Mr. Carlyle to please speak to the Premier. We suspect the Premier is losing it. We suspect the Premier is losing it. There's no focus on governance. There's no focus on governance. When farm workers raise the issue of minimum wages, When the farm workers raised the issue of evictions, all that they got was assaults thereafter. And that is what we will fight toe to toe with the Democratic Alliance in this program.
Now, at this point, we've run out of time. We're about to conclude the program. A lot of the time you did spend howling, but also making sure that other people are not being listened to. And I guess you will have yourselves to blame for that. I hope it's a lesson for next time, that the more orderly we become, then at least we can get as many people in and as many issues from into like pose questions into onto our panel members. I'm going to ask you, Mr. Sampson, to just make a remark or two just on whether, having listened to the concerns of these people who form part of the Western Cape community, as well as these leaders who are going to lead the main parties that will be contesting next year's election, whether from what you've heard from them and from what you've heard from the community, members of the community, you think that we are set for a free and fair electoral atmosphere going forward.
Thank you for you. I knew it was going to be rough, but I think it's going to be rougher than what I thought it was. But at a very serious level, I've heard a lot of screaming and shouting. I haven't heard any campaigning. And I think we must be very careful in how we engage with the general public out there. We must be careful that we haven't used this opportunity to turn a lot of people away from the polls instead of attracting them to the polls by the way in which we've been screaming and shouting. I think that when we enter into the electoral period, when the president proclaims the election date, then the electoral code of conduct will kick in. And it's going to be critically important for us to adhere to the Electoral Code of Conduct. It's also going to be important for us to understand the society in which we are going to campaign. There is tremendous poverty. We feel it all the time in trying to prepare for this election. You have areas where there's incredible infrastructure, beautiful wide roads. Then you have areas where there's low infrastructure or no infrastructure. There's small geographic space, there's high population density, and we have to try and arrange elections that are going to be free and fair. So we will be meeting as we do on a monthly basis with the political parties and continue to do that. But I think that we all have to really understand that we are dealing with critical factors of unemployment and poverty and homelessness and people who are just waiting and crying out for better lives and greater opportunities. Unfortunately, we sit also within a balance between two issues which are critical. The one being the issue of privilege, and the other one being the privilege of the problem of incredible disadvantage. That is what we need to achieve. And I think that when we go into this election, that should be uppermost and foremost in our minds. I've always believed that if we go into democracy and we build democracy, there has to be two critical components involved. And those two critical components are decency and dignity for all the people of this country. Thank you very much for you.
Okay, thank you very much to our panelists. Thank you very much for making this happen. I'm sure all of us will learn from this experience how to conduct ourselves moving forward and whether, in fact, we can work together even though we are separate entities, people with various and different interests, to ensure that there is a free and fair election in the Western Cape. To you, thank you very much for being nearly as good as you were. I hope next time it will be a lot better. Thank you very much, and that's where we're going to leave it, and good night.
time is it?